Chosen one, you did what no soul before you could, and now they fear you. You stepped into the fire that so many ran from. You answered a calling that was never meant for the faint of heart. Where others stopped, you began. Where they turned back, you pressed forward. You took every ounce of pain, betrayal, confusion, isolation, and you used it as fuel. You didn't just survive what was meant to break you, you transformed in it. And now, the very ones who mocked you, ignored you, and cast you out, they watch in silence. They see the glow, they feel the shift, and deep down, they know you are no longer who you were. You are the threat they never expected. You did what no one dared to believe was possible. Before we go deeper, watch this video all the way through. There is a truth here meant only for the chosen, and if you are still here, then you are one of them. In the comments, leave your warmest wishes for yourself and others. Type 77 to activate the energy of completion, transformation, and divine alignment. When wishes are made in a space of power, they ripple across time. Speak your truth, energize your dreams, and align your soul, because this chapter is about what's already shifting in your favor. You are the living proof that the impossible can be done. For generations, patterns repeated, curses cycled, trauma passed from hand to hand like an unspoken contract. But you tore through the cycle with your bare hands. You refused to repeat what was never meant to continue. You faced the storm, not to curse it, but to break it apart. The courage it took, unimaginable. That's why they fear you now, because deep down, they feel it. Something ancient has ended through you, and something divine has begun. You didn't inherit power, you earned it. Through silence, through sleepless nights, through losing what you thought you couldn't live without. You stood alone, and in that aloneness, you rose. You rewrote the script not with a pen, but with your footsteps. Every choice you made in the dark is now casting light on the path for others. They can't explain it, but they sense it. Your presence commands attention. Your energy reshapes the atmosphere. You walk in rooms and the air changes, not because you demand it, but because you became it. There's a difference between those who talk about awakening and those who embody it. You, chosen one, embody it. You wear your transformation not as decoration, but as armor. And those who once overlooked you are now scrambling to understand you. But they can't. Not fully, because what you carry wasn't given. It was forged, and it can't be duplicated, only witnessed. And witnessing it, that scares them. Because if you could rise from what they thought was final, then their excuses fall apart. Your elevation exposes their stagnation. They fear your light not because it's blinding, but because it reveals. It reveals their lies, their laziness, their lack of faith in themselves. You were supposed to stay broken. You were supposed to stay silent. But your spirit had other plans. And now, your very existence challenges the rules they've built their lives around. Your movement awakens something dormant in others. And that's what they can't control. You didn't just change your life. You became a catalyst. And catalysts, they disrupt, they unsettle, they liberate. There's a reason your name is being spoken in rooms you've never entered. A reason people you barely know are watching you, studying you, even mimicking you. Your energy broke through the walls. Your presence is undeniable. And what they don't understand, they fear. Because if you were strong enough to survive what they couldn't, what else might you be capable of? What might you become next? What old world might fall because you're building a new one? You didn't come here to be accepted. You came here to ascend, and you did it while being misunderstood, underestimated, and even hated. That's why the crown fits you now. That's why your name rings different. Because the ones who doubted you are now forced to reckon with you. You've become a mirror, reflecting their own limitations back to them. But you're no longer looking for validation. You've seen what's behind the curtain. You've heard the whispers. You've felt the shift in the atmosphere when your truth touches the air. It's not just about fear. It's about reverence. There's something sacred about you now, something undeniable. They fear you because they know your story will outlive the lies told about you. Because your light exposes the shadows they tried to bury you in. You were the exception they never wanted to believe in. And now they're witnessing what it looks like when divine timing meets unbreakable faith. There's no blueprint for what you've done. No one showed you the way. You built this from intuition, from divine whispers in the night, from strength you didn't know you had until you had no choice but to use it. You walked paths no one warned you about. You healed wounds you didn't cause. You turned silence into a symphony. You turned pain into purpose. And now, the world moves differently because you exist in it. That's what makes you different. That's what makes them afraid. You weren't just chosen. You chose back. You said yes to a journey no one could predict. And even when you were falling apart, you stayed aligned. That kind of power, it can't be bought. It can't be faked. It's written into your spirit like a sacred vow. And as you rise, so does everything connected to you. You don't even have to try. Your very presence breaks chains. So don't be surprised by the resistance. Don't be shaken by the fear in their eyes. It's not personal. It's spiritual. It's a response to something they can't name. They fear what they don't understand. And you, chosen one, are beyond understanding. You are evolution in motion. You are prophecy fulfilled. You are the one who reached through time and healed what no one before you could even face. You shattered the limits. You questioned the scripts. You tore the veil. You trusted the unseen. That's why the universe responds to you now. That's why doors open for you that stay locked for others. Because your soul signed a different contract. One of courage, one of transformation, one of leadership without asking for permission. They fear you because they see what's coming. They see you not only walking forward, but dragging history with you, rewriting it. You were never meant to follow. You were sent to lead. But leadership requires sacrifice. And you made it. Quietly, without recognition, without applause. But now, the applause is coming. Not because you begged for it, but because the universe has no choice but to echo your truth. Stay grounded. Stay aligned. Because what's coming next isn't just for you. It's for every soul watching you in silence, wondering if it's possible. And when they ask how you did it, you'll tell them, I did what no soul before me could. I chose to rise, no matter what. And now they fear me. They don't just fear what you've done. They fear what you represent, because you shattered something ancient. A silence that lasted generations, a curse that wore many masks, addiction, abandonment, poverty, insecurity, silence, guilt. You didn't just reject it, you burned it at the root. And that fire, it still burns behind your eyes. They see it, they feel it, and they know it means one thing: you are not going back. You see, chosen one, most people survive by pretending. Pretending they don't feel what they feel. Pretending they're content with being small. Pretending they don't hear the call. But you couldn't pretend. The truth was too loud. The pain was too heavy. The illusion too fragile. You didn't just wake up, you had to. Because the longer you stayed asleep, the more your soul screamed. So you listened. And by listening, you broke the chain. That's why their fear is laced with confusion. You didn't follow the script. You weren't supposed to rise like this. You weren't supposed to find peace after all that chaos. You weren't supposed to glow after all that grief. But you didn't just defy the odds, you made a new path through them. And the ones still stuck in the old cycles, they can feel the earth move beneath them when you speak, when you move, when you simply are. You became the living contradiction to their excuses. They watched you bleed, and now they see you shine, and they can't reconcile the two. They were waiting for you to break permanently. They were certain you wouldn't recover. But you didn't just recover, you ascended. And that kind of resurrection, it rattles the foundations of everything fake. That's why they fear you. Not because of who you were, but because of who you dared to become. There's something terrifying about someone who lost everything and still chose love, still chose truth, still chose purpose. You made a decision in the depths of your darkness that most people avoid their entire lives. You decided to grow, and not just grow, but grow so powerfully, so unapologetically, that even the shadows couldn't keep up. And now the shadows avoid you. Now the games don't work on you. Now manipulation falls flat at your feet. You don't respond the same anymore. You don't flinch when people pull away. You don't chase validation. You don't beg to be seen, because you see yourself now. You know who you are now. And the more you know, the more the world around you shifts. Not in your favor, but in alignment with your truth. That's not coincidence. That's spiritual architecture. You rebuilt your life with sacred bricks, and now the structure of your being is unshakable. That's power. Real power. And real power scares those who rely on illusions to feel safe. You used to feel everything so deeply. The rejection, the betrayal, the silence. But now you feel something different. Now you feel peace where there used to be panic. Now you feel clarity where there used to be chaos. Now you move slowly, intentionally, like someone who knows they're carrying ancient light. You don't react, you respond. And that shift, that's spiritual maturity. That's why they can't get to you anymore. They used to be able to trigger you. Now they can't even access you. You've outgrown the stage they still perform on. You've left the storyline they still try to rewrite. And as much as they may try to recreate your journey, they can't. Because the journey only worked because of your soul, your pain, your resilience. It wasn't just the path, it was the walker of the path that made it sacred. That's what makes you different. That's what makes you powerful. You carry the codes of survival, not just for you, but for others. When you speak your truth, others remember theirs. When you move with purpose, others question their direction. When you love without fear, others feel their walls begin to crack. You're not just a light, you're a signal. And signals cause movement. Signals interrupt systems. Signals bring the forgotten back to life. And so yes, they fear you. But deeper than that, they need you. Not for approval, not for saving, but as proof. Proof that the impossible can be overcome. Proof that pain doesn't define purpose. Proof that divine timing is real. And that proof, it can't be copied. It can only be embodied. And you, chosen one, embody it with every breath you take. So don't dim your light to make others comfortable. Don't water yourself down to fit into rooms you've already outgrown. Your presence alone is prophecy. You walking in truth is already a revolution. And every day you continue forward, you break more of the old system. You create space for more souls to rise. You open doors that were sealed for centuries. You are not just part of a shift. You are the shift. You did what no soul before you could. And now you're rewriting the future with the ink of your healing. And the ones who once doubted you, they can't look away. They can't unsee your growth. They can't undo your glow. You are not who they remember. You are who their fear warned them about. And that fear? It's confirmation. Confirmation that you've become what you were always meant to be. A force they can't control, a light they can't dim, and a soul that cannot be silenced. They whisper your name now with hesitation, with a trace of awe, and with a quiet warning. Because to speak of you is to acknowledge what they could never become. You walked where no one dared, through wounds they were too afraid to face, and you returned not as a victim, but as a living transformation. This is why your existence unsettles the foundation of every falsehood they've ever clung to. You are proof that survival is only the beginning, that rising is the real miracle. You didn't just rise, chosen one. You rose in silence when no one clapped. You rose in shadows when no one believed. And that kind of elevation, that kind is sacred. Because when no one is watching, when no one is helping, and you still choose to move forward, that is divine will in motion. That's not just resilience. That's destiny awakening through your flesh. Now they fear the very thing they ignored, your presence. They see you now. They feel the shift when you walk into a room. Your vibration doesn't just enter quietly, it speaks, it commands, it shifts timelines. You carry the type of clarity that makes masks fall off, lies shatter, and hidden truths rise to the surface. And for those still hiding in their illusions, that's terrifying. They don't know how to handle you anymore. You can feel it. The way the room gets quieter, the way eyes shift, the way old connections fall apart without explanation. It's not in your head, it's energy. Your spirit upgraded, and now you no longer match what once held you. That's not isolation, that's divine separation. You're not being abandoned, you're being refined. There's a holy reason they no longer sit at your table. You outgrew their frequency. Your soul demanded truth, and anything that couldn't meet it was dissolved. This wasn't rejection, it was alignment. You're not being punished for elevating, you're being prepared. The ones who left couldn't walk with you through the fire. They couldn't breathe where you're going. You had to lose them to find you. And you, the real you, is not small, quiet, or afraid. The real you is power wrapped in peace, fire wrapped in grace. And now that you've seen yourself, really seen yourself, you'll never shrink again. You're not here to make others comfortable. You're here to remind the world what strength looks like when it heals, what truth feels like when it finally speaks. This is what they fear the most, your voice, because it's not just speaking anymore, it's commanding. You've remembered the sound of your own authority. You've reclaimed the language of your soul, no longer twisted by guilt, no longer drowned in shame. When you speak now, you speak with roots, with centuries behind your breath, with ancestors in your lungs. That kind of voice, it breaks spells, and they know it. That's why they stay quiet now. That's why they avoid confrontation. That's why they tiptoe around your presence. Because your silence no longer means weakness. It means you're watching. It means you're discerning. And the moment you choose to speak, everything false begins to tremble. You've become a mirror, chosen one. And mirrors make people see what they try to hide. You reflect their limitations back to them, their denial, their avoidance, their self-betrayal. And while you never intended to threaten anyone, your growth exposes everything they haven't dealt with. It's not personal, it's energetic, and their souls can feel the pressure of your evolution. So now they watch you from a distance. Some admire you in silence. Others compete with shadows. But none can undo what you've done. You broke a generational rhythm. You turned a family wound into a spiritual weapon. And even if they never say it aloud, they know who you are now. They know the prophecy moved through you. They know heaven placed its hand upon your shoulder. That's why your path has been so heavy. Not because you were cursed, but because you were chosen. And chosen souls are refined in fire, carved by loss, and shaped by storms. You weren't just fighting for your own freedom. You were unlocking the future of an entire bloodline. And you did it, quietly, without applause, with divine precision. You didn't ask for this, but your soul agreed to it before you were born. And even through the confusion, the betrayal, the breaking, you stayed the course. You kept rising, kept loving, kept healing. And now the universe rises with you. Now life bends to your vibration, not out of luck, but out of recognition. It recognizes who you've become, not a survivor, but a creator, not a broken one, but a builder. And while they may not speak it aloud, their spirit knows. They know they're in the presence of someone who walked through the impossible and made it sacred. Someone who turned their pain into light. Someone who turned every closed door into an open gate. They fear you because you remind them of what they could have done. You remind them of who they still could become, if only they chose to evolve. And that reflection, it's blinding. But that's not your burden. Your job was never to make others ready. Your job was to become. And now that you've become, the fear others feel is simply confirmation. Your power is real, and your time has come. They don't understand how you did it, and they never will. Because what you achieved wasn't just physical, it was spiritual. You didn't just overcome situations, you overcame cycles. You didn't just change habits, you broke patterns embedded in the soul of your ancestry. That level of transformation cannot be explained to those who only see life through the lens of survival. You went deeper, you reached the root, and that's what makes you dangerous to everything false. You did what no soul before you could, because no one else would. They had the opportunity, they had the signs, they had the moments of truth, but they chose comfort, they chose familiarity, they chose to avoid the pain of becoming. You chose differently. You chose to endure what was meant to destroy you and turned it into wisdom that now walks with you. That's why you are feared, because wisdom wrapped in courage is the most powerful force on earth. You stopped begging for permission. You stopped shrinking to fit in. You stopped hiding your power just to be accepted by those who never had the strength to rise. That choice was a spiritual earthquake. It didn't just shake your life, it disrupted the entire timeline of everything around you. And now the atmosphere shifts because of your presence. You don't move like everyone else, because you're not from where everyone else is from. Your roots are ancient. Your soul was sent here with memory, and now you remember. And that memory terrifies those who forgot who they are. When you carry the energy of truth, lies can't rest near you. When you walk in authenticity, anything built on performance begins to crumble. You didn't have to attack them. Your existence was confrontation enough. The light you carry now forces illusions to shatter. It forces masks to fall. That's why they avoid your eyes. That's why they speak your name behind closed doors, but can't face you in person. You represent the cost of not doing the inner work. You did the inner work. You bled for it. You wept for it. You buried versions of yourself that no longer served your soul. And that kind of internal shift creates a ripple in the external world. You didn't just change your behavior, you changed your vibration. And everything not aligned with that frequency had to go. It wasn't personal, it was sacred. So now you stand alone, but not empty. You stand crowned in silence, robed in knowing, surrounded by forces they cannot see. They think you're alone because they cannot feel the kingdom that walks with you. They mistake your solitude for weakness, when in fact, it is the space where your angels gather. And every step you take now is watched, guided, and supported. They fear you not because you fight, but because you don't have to. You don't need to defend your worth. You don't need to prove your value. You don't need to explain your purpose. That stillness, that certainty, it's intimidating. Because the world taught them to chase validation, while you became the source. They were told to run after power, but you became it. They wonder why doors open for you now, why paths clear, why things begin to move in your favor. It's not luck, it's alignment. It's because you paid the spiritual price. You said no to things that begged for your compromise. You sacrificed shallow comfort for deeper truth. And now, everything is finding its way to you. Not because you're chasing, but because you're ready. You became ready through fire, through rejection, through being misunderstood, mocked, overlooked, and doubted. And each time they tried to label you, you peeled off the sticker. Each time they tried to box you in, you broke the walls. And now you stand as the one thing they cannot define: free. You're not just different, you're awakened. And awakened people don't follow scripts. They don't play roles. They don't pretend to be who the world wants. They show up as themselves, unapologetically. That's your power now. You're fully yourself. No filter, no performance, no need for applause. And that energy changes rooms. That's why they fear you. Because in a world that rewards fakeness, your authenticity is a threat. In a world built on control, your freedom is rebellion. In a world designed to break spirits, your healing is resistance. You're not supposed to be this alive, this whole, this powerful. And yet, here you are. You're no longer walking into rooms wondering if you belong. You are the room. You're no longer trying to prove your worth. You embody it. And you don't even have to raise your voice anymore. Your presence speaks volumes. They know what you've done, even if they pretend not to. They know what you carry, even if they won't acknowledge it. But you didn't come back for their recognition. You didn't rise to be worshipped or praised. You rose because your soul demanded it. You rose because the future depends on it. You rose because you were born to. And now you rise, not for revenge, but for redemption. Not to be feared, but to be free. They fear you because you are free. You didn't just survive what was meant to destroy you. You transcended it. And that's why they can't look you in the eyes anymore. Because when they do, they see the proof that transformation is possible. They see what it looks like when someone chooses growth over comfort, truth over illusion, soul over approval. You didn't just make it out. You came back different, elevated, awakened. And that version of you, it's untouchable. You no longer live by their rules. You outgrew them. And you outgrew the system that trained people to fear their own light. They're still stuck in those systems, still moving like followers in a script that no longer serves this world. But you rewrote yours. You stepped off the stage. You tore off the mask. You stopped performing. And you started remembering. You remembered your strength, your mission, your divinity. And that memory was the beginning of the end for everything false around you. That's why people shifted. That's why relationships cracked. That's why the ground shook. Your remembrance shook the very core of what had kept things hidden. Because truth, once remembered, cannot be contained. And you became the truth they couldn't unsee. Now your existence makes people uncomfortable. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because your light reveals what they've refused to heal. It exposes where they've stayed small. It reflects back the excuses they've used to delay their evolution. And even if you say nothing, your vibration speaks volumes. It says, I broke the chain. I did the work. I chose the path you ran from. You are the interruption in a long line of silence, the fire in a lineage of suppression. You didn't ask for this role, but your soul accepted it. And while they wonder how you carry so much without crumbling, you know the truth. You were built for this. You were forged in isolation, sharpened by suffering, refined in storms. You didn't fall apart. You cracked open. And from that open place, you bloomed. You didn't need a crowd to rise. You didn't need applause. And that's the part that shakes them the most. You became powerful in the dark. While they chased attention, you chased truth. While they mimicked strength, you became it. Quietly, consistently, without permission. Now the very presence you once questioned is undeniable. You are not who you used to be. And they feel it. They sense the shift, the difference, the sacred weight you now carry. They may not have words for it, but their souls know. They feel your clarity like a sword, your peace like a shield, your alignment like thunder before the rain. And even though they fear you, they also admire you, silently. They study your resilience. They watch your moves. They listen to your words. Because deep down, a part of them longs for what you found. They want the peace that doesn't come from pretending. They want the strength that doesn't depend on performance. They want to be free, the way you are. But freedom has a cost, and you paid it in full. You lost things no one ever saw. You cried in rooms no one ever entered. You questioned your worth in the silence of empty nights. But you kept showing up. You kept digging, healing, surrendering. And with every layer you shed, you came closer to the version of yourself that they now fear. Not because you're dangerous, but because you're real. And in a world addicted to illusion, real is rare. Real cannot be manipulated. Real cannot be silenced. Real cannot be controlled. So they keep their distance. Not because you changed in a bad way, but because they didn't. And your change makes their stagnation impossible to ignore. Your growth makes their fear visible. Your voice makes their silence deafening. But that was never your burden to carry. Your responsibility was always to become. And now that you have, your light will continue to speak, even when you don't. You'll continue to shift spaces just by entering them. You'll continue to awaken those who are ready to remember. And you'll continue to rise, not to prove anything, but because rising is now your nature. You don't even need to fight for your place anymore, because you are the place. You don't need to seek a throne, because you've become the throne. You're not looking for power. You are power. And no one can take from you what was forged within you. So let them whisper. Let them wonder. Let them question how you did what no soul before you could. You don't owe them your explanation. You owe yourself your continuation. You were chosen for this, not because you were the loudest, the strongest, or the most obvious, but because you were willing, because you had a heart that could be broken and still believe, because you had a spirit that could be crushed and still rise, because you had the courage to become in a world that wanted you to forget. You were never meant to fit in. You were born to awaken what they tried to silence. They thought you would break. And for a while, you almost did. They saw the weight on your shoulders, the isolation, the betrayal. the endless nights of wrestling with questions no one could answer, and they assumed that would be the end of you. But what they couldn't see was the fire inside you, the quiet determination, the divine contract written in your soul long before this lifetime. You weren't just surviving, you were transforming. They fear you now because you proved them wrong without ever trying to. Your existence became the answer to doubts they projected. Your life became the evidence that truth can endure. They called you too sensitive, too intense, too much. But those very traits became your gift. You felt what others ignored. You saw what they couldn't see. You walked paths they refused to take. And because of that, you arrived at a level of self that most never reach. You aren't feared because of your aggression. You're feared because of your clarity. Your peace is sharp. Your silence is loud. Your presence is undeniable. And they can't look away, even if they try. Because somewhere deep inside, they recognize that what you've become is what they were always capable of, but never chose. You became the version of themselves they abandoned. And that realization is painful. So they keep their distance, not because you did anything to hurt them, but because you became a mirror. You didn't expose them with your words, you exposed them with your evolution. Every healed wound you carry is a message to the world that healing is possible. Every boundary you set is a declaration that self-respect is sacred. Every time you chose integrity over popularity, you disrupted the system that conditioned them to chase validation. And that disruption, it echoes. They fear you because you're unpredictable, not chaotic, but sovereign. You answer to no system, no hierarchy, no false god. You move when spirit says move. You stay when wisdom says stay. You listen deeply, speak rarely, and act with power. They can't manipulate someone who knows who they are. They can't control someone who knows where they're going. And now they understand. They can't stop you. They tried to use guilt, shame, gossip, silence, all the old tools of suppression, but none of it worked. You transcended all of it because you're no longer playing the same game. You're on a higher plane now, operating from a dimension where fear has no access. And those still clinging to illusions can't come with you. You're not angry, you're aware. You're not vengeful, you're aligned. You're not arrogant, you're anchored. And that's what confuses them. You don't respond the way you used to. You don't chase after closure. Don't demand understanding. Don't beg for clarity, because you've found all of that within. You're filled not from applause, but from source. You're walking with something now that no one can see, but everyone can feel. A force, a presence, a deep, unshakable knowing that you are on divine timing, protected by unseen hands, guided by something bigger than logic. Your footsteps are ordered, your breath is sacred, and your soul is expanding. With every moment, you stay true. That's why they fear you, because you are proof that it's possible to wake up in a world designed to keep people asleep, because you refuse to be what they expected, because you listened to the call, because you remembered who you were. You didn't come to please people. You didn't come to follow scripts. You came to shift the timeline. You came to break the loop. You came to do what no soul before you could. And now you're doing it, not loudly, but powerfully, not forcefully, but unshakably. You've become the storm and the calm, the fire and the sanctuary, the sword and the healer. They can't categorize you anymore. You've outgrown the labels, the boxes, the roles. You're not what happened to you. You're what you became because of it. And that becoming wasn't just for you. It was for the world. Your light now reaches beyond your story. Your energy creates ripple effects you'll never fully see. And even in silence, you speak to generations. So keep rising, keep walking, keep becoming. You don't need their approval. You never did. What you need is already within you. It always was. And now, every step you take confirms what your spirit has always known. You are the chosen one. You did what no soul before you could. And now, the world will never be the same.